This is our lovely Memphis Blue. Say hi, baby. I know we were standing on our legs earlier and doing all sorts of lovely stuff. Yes. Oh. And we come in at night and we sit by the chair and we support Daddy's writing. Yes, we do. We're going out of focus. All right. And then over here, we have our girl. Hi, girl. Hey. Say hi to everybody. Okay, there we go. All right, she's our one cat. Yep. One cat to find them. Oh, God, I can't believe I'm missing the one cat. Anyway, one cat to rule them all. One cat to find them. One cat to bring them all. And in the darkness, smack the shit out of them. Yep, that's our girl. Okay, so in the last chapter we had Eggy's lovely moment, and he, of course, is now a vase and having a wonderful time. And Jason is sitting back and he's like, this is it, this is great, I'm going to drink my way through the rest of the evening, hang out with my friends, have a wonderful time, all my magic and discovery is done and over with. And then Sandy says, I've been waiting long enough. What on earth did you have in mind? So then, of course, we have a riff on the Sound of Music, and we have lots of laughter and all that good stuff. But finally, they settle down. So I'll read the last sentence from chapter 38, Eggy's Time. In a few minutes, we all gathered together again, and this time we were ready to get down to business. Chapter 38, Burning Glass. Sandy, when we were at the Tim Charm, you said you visualized what you wanted to make inside a small piece of metal. Then you applied your magic and burned that pattern into the charm. Is that right? Yes, that is correct, Sandy replied. When you talk about burning a charm, I think you mean that you actually make a physical channel in the charm, so there's an empty space for magic to flow. I guess the walls of the channel are a smooth melted metal, some of which still holds onto the magic. I know I'm keeping it really simple here, but is that basically correct? Sandy nodded. I cut open a failed charm just to get a view of what it looked like, and that is what I saw. It looked like the channels were cut out with a laser. Actually, that's too clean of an image. The tunnels weren't that straight and neat. It was like something really hot had melted its way through. The walls of the tunnels also retain some of the magic. That's what makes it a charm. The magic in the charm funnels the neutral magic, so it makes the runes and the logical connections. Without that, it's just a piece of metal with holes in it. I think I know the answer to this, I said, but why hasn't someone made a charm with the channels already in it? Then a mage could fill the channels with magic, toast the sides, and make a perfect charm. John could shape the metal, so I'm sure that's something he can do. We tried that, Sandy replied. The problem is that I can't tell where the channels are. The charms are really small, and there wasn't anything magic in the empty... Charms are really small, and there wasn't anything magic in the empty tunnels for me to follow. We tried larger charms, but again, there was no way to see inside them and see exactly where I needed to burn. If that was your idea, I'm afraid it won't work. I just grinned. Do you have some of the magic sticks you bought at the spinning tail? Sure, she said. Let me go get them. She disappeared into her workshop and came back a few minutes later with a handful of glass rods. Excellent, I said. Now take one of them and show us what the layout inside of the charm looks like. That'll be way too big for a charm, Sandy said doubtfully. I agree, I replied, but I want to see what we're working with, and I want you to have a clear pattern for the next step. Okay, she shrugged, putting all the extra glass rods down on the counter. Then she held one rod in her hand and concentrated for a moment. The glass first melted into a puddle, like it had at Henry's shop, and then it quickly formed into what must be the inner workings of the healing charm. The whole thing was pretty complex, with circles and lines going everywhere. The healing rune was there, of course, but so were several others. I had no idea how it all worked, or how Sandy managed to clearly visualize the whole thing while she burned it. This was fascinating stuff, and Annabeth, John, and Tyler all leaned in for a closer look. The whole thing was about 2 inches wide, and it seemed quite delicate. "That looks really great," I said. This one is going to be your master copy. Now go over it and make sure it's exactly what you want. Double check the lines are the right size, they are as curved or as straight as you want them to be, and the whole thing is just perfect." Sandy took a moment to review it and ended up making a few small adjustments. "It really is neat seeing it at this scale and in glass," Sandy said. "There is so much pressure to get the image right when I'm burning it that I haven't really taken the time to really appreciate just how pretty it is." John and Tyler chimed in with a few compliments too, but I didn't want to get off track. "Since this model was formed with your magic, can you feel the glass?" I asked. "Yeah," Sandy nodded. "Although it's interesting because I can sense with both my magic and my earth sense." Then she gave John a quick kiss on the cheek. "I'm still getting used to John's powers. He can sense the world in a whole different way than I do. That only further became enhanced when I became an ambassador of the deep earth. So when I sense the model, it feels like both fire and solid rock at the same time. When I sense the model, it feels like both solid fire and soft rock at the same time." "I was hoping that would be the case," I told her. "Now that you have your big model exactly like it should be, I'd like you to take a tiny bit of glass and make it a small charm-size model as well. You should be able to get it perfect as you're really making a copy." Sandy took another glass rod and melted just a drop of glass off of it. Then she took that drop and made a small model of a charm that was only about a 1/4 inch wide. It was impossibly fragile, but she levitated it off her palm and kept it safe. "At this scale, I'm really seeing a difference between my two views," Sandy noted. "I can sense the magic in the glass, but it's kind of fuzzy. That's normal for me as my magic isn't anywhere near as detailed as yours, Jason. On the other hand, my earth sense is still sharp. I really use that more than my fire magic to shape the glass, so all the lines are precise and it's a perfect copy of the big model." "I was hoping that would be the case too," I said in delight. "So far this is working out perfectly. Now, John, do you have a bit of metal or stone that you can donate to this experiment?" "Of course," he replied. "I always carry different metals with me in case I get inspired to make something." He dug around in his pockets. "How about copper or silver? We've used both of them for charms before." "Let's go with copper," I said with a glance at Sandy to see if she agreed. "This is just an experiment and it's not a finished product." "Copper works great as a charm, so that's fine with me," Sandy said. "Okay then," I looked back at John. "I want you to take a small bit of copper and use it to cover her small glass model. Just remember, it needs to be thick enough for Sandy to burn." John gave me an indignant look, and I realized who I was talking to. "Sorry about the extra instructions," I said wryly. You've made way more charms than I have, so just use your best judgment." "Thank you," John said sarcastically, and then he gave me a grin. "I'm sure I couldn't have done it without your excellent directions." "Some people just need all the help they can get," I teased him. He was getting ready to tease me right back when Sandy shot him a hard look. "Don't get distracted, John. This glass is very fragile, so don't you dare make me start over." "Yes, ma'am," he replied smartly, then gave me a side wink. John loved to have fun, but he was also a master of his craft. He pulled out a small roll of copper that looked like it used to be an electric wire for an industrial site. He took the end and rubbed it between his two fingers for a moment, and a small piece of copper broke off. He kept rubbing it, and soon it pooled in his hand like it was a thick liquid. He motioned to Sandy, and she levitated her small glass model over his hand and set it down gently in the middle of the copper. For a moment, nothing happened, but then the copper began flowing upward and very gently covered the glass model. It was a slow, delicate process, as John didn't want to break anything. Once the glass was fully covered, the copper closest to the glass started to harden, protecting it. At that point, the rest of the copper started flowing much faster, and soon the tiny glass model was fully encased in a disc of copper. John handed the disc to Sandy and sat back, taking a big drink. "It's all yours now, my love." "Thank you, Metal Man," she said with a smile. "Can you still feel the glass inside the copper?" I asked. This was the million-dollar question. "Yes," she replied. "It's a bit strange as my magic is only picking up the glass, but my metal sense is picking up both the copper and the glass." "Very good," I replied. "I'm pretty sure you know where this is going now, but let's see if you can use the glass as a guide to burn in your healing charm. Just remember that you can be more careful with your magic, so you don't need to hold an image in your head. Try gradually increasing your power first to make sure everything is good before going into full burn mode." "Good idea," Sandy replied. Her voice was serious and she had her game face on. This little piece of glass and copper was getting her full attention. My magic sight could both see her power as well as see inside the charm, so it was easy for me to keep track of what she was doing. I saw her power flow in, and for a moment she almost ruined it by giving one part of the glass too much magic. She stopped in time and adjusted her flow. The scale was so small she had to be extra careful, but she quickly got the hang of it. Once the power was even again, she kept giving the glass magic until there was a pop and the copper disc jumped a bit. Once it settled again, I looked inside, and sure enough, the charm had been burned in. Our little experiment had worked. Sandy let out the breath she'd been holding and finally gave herself permission to get excited. "I think it worked," she gasped. She added some of her own magic to the charm and then activated it. "It worked," she said softly, like saying it too loud might cause the result to get up and run away. She looked at us with shining eyes and then triggered the charm again. "It worked!" This time she didn't hold back her excitement. She threw herself into John's arms, kissing him with abandon. "It worked, it worked, it worked," she crowed when she came up for air. Then she did a happy dance and we all laughed and joined in. For a while the air was thick with congratulations, high fives, low fives, booty shaking and waving of the hands in the air like we just didn't care. Finally, we all hit the restroom one more time, got drink refills, and settled around the table again. "Jason, if this is the only one of your ideas that worked tonight, it would still be life-changing." Sandy started back up again. "You've already accomplished two things. First, you've come up with a way for me to make a perfect charm every time. That means I won't be wasting any more magic on duds. And second, you've now given me a way to burn a charm without having to completely visualize it first. That means I can duplicate different charms now without first spending months learning every nuance and detail. Instead, I can make a large-scale model first, then shrink it down for a final burn. No memorization required." She looked at all of us in wonder. It was like she was imploring us to realize just how big this moment was. I bet this is how collections get started. Someone figures out how to make templates and burn charms consistently, then they use that to build an empire. She paused again, lost in thought for a moment. "This is probably one more thing we shouldn't talk to anyone else. We shouldn't talk about to anyone else. At least not yet. Not until we try this out a lot more and figure it out completely. I'm not sure they would be happy to have another competitor." "That is a very good idea," John said. "I don't fancy getting on the wrong side of a collection. They are extremely powerful and they could probably bring a lot more heat than we could handle." Our celebratory mood turned serious and everyone got quiet for a minute. We were still facing the rotten mages. The last thing we needed was another enemy. Anyway, let's move on. Sandy straightened her shoulders, smiled, and worked to lighten the mood again. Jason, you said you had multiple things to try out. What else did you want to do? Now that you can work off a template, I wanted to upgrade your healing charm, I replied. I made a conscious effort to follow Sandy's lead and lighten the mood too. Oh? Sandy certainly sounded interested. What did you have in mind? Well, for starters, I wanted to upgrade the healing rune to the one that T uses. It's in the shape of a flower with all the right flow, and it's a lot more powerful. Also, I've been thinking that if runes have flow, shouldn't the logical connections have flow too? Sandy had a dismissive look on her face as she opened her mouth to tell me something. Then she paused, and her look changed to a puzzled one. You're right, she said thoughtfully. They conduct magic through them just like runes. Why wouldn't flow make a difference for them? I've never thought about that before, but it wouldn't hurt to try. And with that, we started making changes to our master template. I used some glass myself to make a large version of T's healing rune. It took a few tries to get it exactly right, but she modified her version to match. It helped that everyone was there and interested in what we were doing. So they were double checking everything behind Sandy. The master model was only about 2 inches wide, and it was hard for everyone to see, so Annabeth suggested that Sandy increase the scale. Because we were working with glass, it was easy to do. Sandy added 3 more sticks of glass to the model and grew it until it was about 15 inches wide. Now all the logical connections had more space between them. The whole charm seemed a lot less intimidating. Then everyone turned their attention to adding flow to the logical connections, and that is where things turned sour. It started out easily enough. Magic sat in the holding section of the charm until it was ready to be used. I thought of it as the battery part of the charm. Then there was a switch type rune that turned on the charm and got the magic flowing. It was once we got beyond the basic on portion of the rune that things got a bit squirrely. Some lines had magic that seemed to go both ways. Some lines connected but joined in odd places. Some lines looked like they were main lines, but we couldn't figure out how they got magic at all. It definitely was a puzzle. Annabeth said it reminded her of one of those mazes like they had on the back of the cereal boxes for the kids. You start at one spot and then draw an unbroken line all the way to the exit. There are lots of dead ends and paths to trick you. When the maze is small, it's pretty easy to figure out, but the large ones can be really difficult. This puzzle was further complicated by the fact that all the lines weren't straight. Many of them curved and connected at multiple points. It felt like trying to figure out the flow in a pile of spaghetti. Actually, that would be easier, as at least the strands weren't connected to other strands. We worked at it for several minutes, but finally gave up. I like your idea, Jason, and it makes sense, but figuring out these lines is beyond me. John sat back, sighed, and took another draught of ale. It's almost like someone deliberately went out of their way to make this as complex as possible. That's exactly right, Sandy sounded frustrated. That's why these complex charms are so hard to master. I can visualize and burn this charm, but I don't know how it works. I can see what some of the runes are, but I don't know how they all really link together. It got quiet as everybody sipped their ale and considered the charm again. Anyway, I have an idea of my own, Sandy continued. Jason, would you like to burn your first charm? Me? I was so surprised. I can't use charms yet, so I figured making them was out of the question. This sounds totally backwards, Sandy said, but I got to thinking that maybe you could use a charm if you were the one that made it. Huh. Maybe it was the ale talking, but that sounded like it might work. Either way, it would be fun to try and burn a charm. Okay, I said, let's do it. Is there anything special I need to know? I'm assuming that you saw everything I did to make the last charm, Sandy asked, and I nodded. Then just do that. She was keeping it simple. I liked it. Other than all the visualization, making the charm seemed like a straightforward process, and now I had a template. I didn't need to worry about doing it the hard way. I'll need some glass, I said, and Sandy handed over a fresh rod. Does it matter how big I make it? I asked. I'd have thought you'd be used to the large size by now. John wiggled his eyebrows at me and gave Tyler a pointed look. Annabeth grinned and Sandy smacked him on the arm. Size on a charm really only matters in two ways, Sandy said in her teacher's voice. The smaller it is, the less personal magic you need to burn it. It also takes less power for the charm to work. On the other hand, it will hold less magic, so it'll run out a lot quicker. For you, I would try to make the charm that is a bit smaller than the one I made. It shouldn't be a problem for you as you have a lot more control over your magic. The advantage is it will take less magic to burn, and you might as well start out small until you get familiar with the process. All that sounded good to me. I wasn't actually going to use this charm for myself, as I had tea to heal me. I wasn't done with all the things I wanted to try yet, and if more of my ideas worked, this charm would be obsolete by the end of the night. I decided not to use my creations and just try to stay as close to what Sandy had done. As close as possible to what Sandy had done. I wrapped my awareness around the glass model Sandy had made, and then let my magic sink into the tip of the rod I held in my hand. I let a tiny drop of glass fall into my palm, and then I started shaping it. No wonder Henry liked working with glass. It was so freaking easy to mold. The glass both flowed like a liquid when I needed it to, and yet held its shape when it was the way I wanted. It was more than that, though. Somehow the glass felt helpful, like it was happy to turn into something more. I thought it would take longer, as I didn't have the layout of the healing charm memorized, but with my magic senses, it was so effortless. I focused on touch more than sight, and just felt how the lines moved. Then I called the glass to form the same shape in my hand, and it did. Easy peasy. It took a little less than a minute, and my tiny glass model was ready. I wanted to be sure it was right, so I went back over all of it again. It was perfect. Okay, John, I said, do your thing. You're done already? Annabeth sounded shocked. You've duplicated every line in the healing charm, all 100,000 of them? She was exaggerating on the number of lines, but it made me laugh. Yes, indeed, I said confidently. They are all there. She and Sandy shared a glance, but Sandy didn't say anything. I guess she just figured it was one more weird thing I could do. I gave John the go-ahead, and he gently encased my glass model in a drop of copper. The copper formed into a disc like an aspirin, and then turned solid. The charm was set. Now all I needed to do was burn it. I was a bit nervous about this step, as I had never done anything like this before. How much magic would it take? Was my magic flow fast enough? My rate of flow was one thing about my magic arsenal that was just average. Hopefully it would be enough. My magic sight could see through the object, so I could both see and feel the glass very well. I gently added a bit of glass to the magic, but everything seemed fine. I increased the flow, and still it was good. My magic spread evenly throughout the glass, and it was starting to saturate nicely. I turned up the flow. Still good. So I turned it up again. I thought it might take a while to get to the burn stage, but I had forgotten I'd massively upgraded my matrix. The disc popped, and I was so surprised I jumped. The little copper pill flew through the air, and I yelped as I didn't want to lose it. Tyler caught it and handed it back to me with a smile and a kiss. I was absorbed in the wonder of his lips for a moment before I realized there's no way I could have lost the charm. My magic was still in it, and I could feel it. It wasn't anywhere near as sharp or crisp as one of my soul creations, but it was enough that I wouldn't lose it. Then I did a double duh. My magic sight could have tracked it just fine. Or John's earth senses could have told him where it was. I gave a mental sigh. My new magic world was so different, and I still wasn't used to it yet. I was nervous to try out my own charm, so I handed it to Sandy. "What do you think?" I said. "Does it work?" Sandy held it for a moment, and she furrowed her brow. "Jason, I think this is probably perfect," Sandy said, and then looked at Annabeth. "What does it sound like?" "The charm sounds great to me," Annabeth replied hesitantly. "But," I questioned. Based on the way they were reacting, something was obviously wrong. "It doesn't sound the same as Sandy's charm," Annabeth said tentatively. "It sounds like you." I was lost, but Sandy nodded in agreement. "Jason, this charm has the most aspect of any I've run across in my whole life. There wasn't a single item at the tin charm that had even half of this aspect." "And that's a bad thing?" I asked. "I'm afraid so," Sandy replied. "When we burn charms, some of our magic gets left behind, and when a different mage picks it up, we have to overcome our magic in order to use it. We have to... Oop. Let me try that again. When we burn charms, some of our magic gets left behind, and when a different mage picks it up, they have to... no, that was right. They have to overcome our magic in order to use it. That's why new charms need a bit of a break-in period. This initial resistance is referred to as aspect, and the lower the aspect, the better. The best charms have very little aspect, so any mage can pick them up and start using them at full power." She looked at me sadly and handed my charm back. "I'm afraid your charm's aspect is off the charts. I'm sure you burned it well and it would be a wonderful charm, but I can't use it. Actually, I doubt anybody could use it." I held my little charm and looked at it in dismay. With my sight and my ability to work at the microscopic level, I thought I'd had a good chance of being a charms master. Burning intricate, tiny charms was going to be easy, but now it looked like my dream of becoming a charms master just wasn't meant to be. People weren't going to buy my charms if they couldn't use them. "If you think about it, that does make sense," my analytical side spoke up. "Your soul is so strong, you can wrap it around magic and create intelligent, self-directed little charms. I'm sure that Annabeth and Sandy can't make soul creations, no matter how hard they tried. The good news is, your soul creations are way more useful than the regular charms that all the other mages have to use. The bad news is when you have to make a real physical charm, it's got your soul in it, and nobody else can use it." I sighed. That did make sense. And if I had to choose between regular charms and my soul creations, I would choose my little peeps every time. I couldn't imagine trying to do magic without T, my grannies, Octa, the miners, the ass blasters, Red, and my surfers. I had a whole range of useful and helpful creations that had saved my ass over and over again. Not being able to make charms was disappointing, but I had nothing to cry about. "I'm sorry," Sandy said gently. "I'm sure that's hard to hear. Actually, I'm upset too. I was hoping you could make me a whole bunch of charms." She gave a sad smile to let me know she was teasing a bit. I must have looked really upset because Annabeth jumped up and gave me a big hug. Then everybody joined in and we all had a group hug. "It's okay," I said, trying to sound as okay as possible. "We still had a great breakthrough tonight, and I'm sure there are still more things I want to try." "Before we move on," Sandy interjected, "I think we should finish with your charm first. You still haven't tried to see if you could use it or not." "All right. I'd forgotten about that part," I said. I felt my charm, and with barely any effort of will at all, I flipped it on, and it came to life. I was so shocked I almost dropped it. "It worked," I exclaimed. Then it turned off. "What the heck? Did it just turn off?" Sandy guessed. I nodded, confused. It's a brand new charm, so it doesn't have any power in it yet. Normally you'd wait and charge it in a circle, but you could just put your magic in it for the time being. Oh, right, thanks, I said, and quickly fed some of my power into its little holding area. I didn't mean to fill it up, but before I knew it, the charm was packed full of juice and ready to overflow. It held a lot less power than my soul creations. I switched it on again, waiting for it to get to full strength. I kept waiting. Then I realized it was as good as it got. What the heck? I knew the power of the healing rune, and it was a lot more powerful than this. What was going on? I zoomed into the charm and watched the magic flow. Now that I could see it moving, the layout made a lot more sense. The power is being throttled, my analytical side noted. I looked at it again. He was right. We've been looking at the charm like everything is in there to be helpful. What if it's not? What if some stuff is in there to sabotage it? My analytical side was getting excited now. What if this is like Leonardo da Vinci, what if this is like what Leonardo da Vinci did with his designs? He always put something wrong in the layout, so if it got stolen, it wouldn't work for them. This has to be something like that, except whoever designed this charm didn't make it completely useless. I quickly relayed what I was seeing to the rest of the group, but I didn't zoom out or focus on them. I was on the hunt now. I was going to figure out what's going on with this charm and fix it. And that ends our chapter. All right, so next time, Jason's on the hunt for the fixing the healing rune, and that leads to some stuff. And of course, he has other ideas he wants to try. It is a very exciting conclusion to this evening. So I'm very excited about that. Personal items of note, so you can stop if you're rewatching this right now. They actually had a Leonardo da Vinci exhibit at a museum in Louisville. It was so fascinating. And in there, yes, like a lot of the stuff that he did, he would deliberately do something. Like he would flip a gear, he would change a switch around, something like that. Like he would always do something on his designs in such a way that if you didn't know the intention of the design and you weren't really familiar with it, like you wouldn't notice it. You just built it the way he did it, and then the darn thing wouldn't go anywhere or do anything, where the water wouldn't flow, or there was so many things he did like that. It was fascinating. It was fun. They had a whole video section where modern engineers took his designs apart, fixed the obvious little things in there, you know, according to today's engineering, that he had made, and then seeing if his designs would work. And so many of his designs really did. Like, you know, a bunch of them obviously never got to be made. You need a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of stuff, but it was fascinating. It was so much fun to see. So anyway, and then that aside, let's talk about writing real quick. So long ago, I had this idea of something that I wanted Jason to experience. Like, I had this idea of him in this situation and what he was going to gain out of it, and how he's going to come out the other side, and what was going to happen. I've been writing towards that for a year at least. So I had the idea way back at the beginning of book 2, and so I've been writing towards that this whole time, and I finally reached it. So I'm so excited. I just can't wait for you guys to get to that point and yeah, experience it. So anyway, that is coming up. Where am I at now? So that is coming up at the very end of chapter 44. So for those of you who are keeping track. Okay, anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday, and I will see you next week. Thank you.